So, James, tomorrow's Liberation Day.
That's what I've
This is
heard.
yeah, it's the idea that these tariffs that are allegedly going into effect tomorrow are going to free America from all the parasitic trading partners. And Trump was saying, charge these countries who are taking our jobs
Yeah.
and taking our wealth. And friend and foe, actually, he said, frankly, friend has oftentimes been much worse than foe. So, what do you think? What's going to happen tomorrow?
Well, you got to put those dirtbag Canadians in their place, right? I mean, come on. I mean, this is ludicrous. I mean, but I think, in fairness, we talked about this before. Okay, there is clearly something to be said for, has America been taken advantage of in the past? Yeah, of course, right? You trade with partners, if you want to call, I mean, if you want to call some of even partners, you trade with people that, for example, don't respect your intellectual property rights. So you go and you export stuff to them. They steal your products, they steal your everything, and they go and they start manufacturing. They knock off all this stuff. I mean, that's not cool. You've got others that, you go and you spend billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to provide security for them, supposedly against a country with which they voluntarily do business, and then they don't chip in for their own security. I mean, these are all completely credible arguments. The assertions they make, again, they're not crazy. On the other hand, to go and say we're gonna turn this cannon on this bazooka on Canada, on Britain, on countries that the United States has had decades, if not centuries, of peaceful coexistence, the most extraordinary relationships, military alliances, intelligence sharing, everything. And I mean, we're not even going to discuss it. We're not even going to talk about it. I mean, that's it's a little bit far fetched to me.
I mean, do
The
we have
thing
any
that
details exactly about what's even going to happen tomorrow?
No, and this is one of the things that makes me very skeptical. I mean, it was just what, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, was the infamous, Signal Gate, the whole blow up where you had guys on a secret text message that inadvertently invited in a reporter. If you think about, I mean, honestly, think about this. The government can't keep a secret. They never have been able to keep a secret. I'm not talking about this government, any government. There's no government that's ever been able to keep a secret. Something comes up and it leaks. The Supreme Court, you remember they were overturning Roe v. Wade, and the text of the document leaked. I mean, this is the Supreme Court. I mean, like, there is no secret in government anymore. They can't keep a secret. There's always a leak. And so I look at this and I go, they've been talking about this for a while, and we haven't seen a single text message, a single email, a single disgruntled staffer somewhere, a single, whatever. I mean, come on, like, there's no leftists, there's no undercover leftists that are hanging out that don't have access to stuff, going through people's garbage cans, whatever. I mean, nothing, not a single thing. I mean, we knew about the Houthi strike and all these things. I mean, nothing has
So
come
are
out,
you
not a
are you
single
saying
leak.
there's not a you think there might not be an actual plan? There might not be a document that's going to be put out that's even going to impose these, or
I wouldn't be surprised if there's actually nothing, because the fact that there's been nothing leaked, that's actually very unusual. Everything else, any other big announcement that's made, whatever, there's always leaks, because there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. There's too many people get their little fingers in it. Some staffer gets a text from somebody, talks to a reporter off the record. All these things that happen. There's somebody's got leverage on somebody, so they force them to cough up some information, who gets a scoop. I mean, nothing has happened here. That's really unusual. That's really, really, really unusual. So I'm actually skeptical. The fact that there's no details at all the day before, and there's no details, that makes me actually very skeptical. I go, maybe maybe this is just more of a head fake. It's yet another
yeah.
head fake to make people think, oh, I swear to God, I'm going to do it. I'm going to oppose these tariffs. And frankly, I mean, that just makes me even more irritated, because the world needs certainty. If you're going to upend all the rules, say the way we've done business for decades, we're going to change that overnight. Fine. Give us the new rules and then we can figure it out. But to keep saying there's going to be new rules and not actually provide us these new rules, that to me is a huge part of the problem. You have to have certainty. You have to have some rules that you can play by, and to constantly be changing that, not providing that level of certainty to the marketplace, is just a massive blunder, in my opinion.
I think that's what's feeding into this whole doom and gloom online as well, where there's this borderline hysteria about what's going to happen to the markets. Say the tariffs do go into place and it's a 25% tariff across the board. Does that mean markets fall by 25%? What exactly is that going to do to the American stock market, for example?
I know we've gotten a lot of questions about this. I know we've gotten a lot of questions. You sent me one, recently, just kind of as a basis of this, for somebody who's saying, What is somebody supposed to do? There is a lot of hysteria. There's a lot of, you got one side, I think, that might doesn't really understand the implications of tariffs and still thinks that, oh yeah, this is great. This is kind of a hardcore MAGA base, whatever it is that, these ideas that they come up with are going to be gold. It's going to be genius. And I'm very skeptical of that too. I think that the history of tariffs is usually quite negative. If you go back to the 1920s and 1930s, tariffs were absolutely horrible. Tariffs against China in 2018, 2019 were okay, but those were very unique and unusual circumstances. China devalued its currency basically to keep up with the tariff, which was a huge benefit to the United States. Are they going to do that again? Probably not. I also question, it's one of the other things that also makes me skeptical is, do these guys honestly think that tariffs are going to do all this good for the US economy? They're going to have this positive impact for the US economy? Do they really believe that? Because if they did, I wonder, why didn't you do it already then? Right? Because if you think about it, from the first second these guys took office, they didn't waste any time, right? They started cleaning house immediately. It was this executive order, that executive order, the border, get rid of all the migrants, get rid of the illegals, get rid of the criminals, clean up the streets, stop putting men in women's sports, get rid of the woke agenda, dismantle the education department. I mean, this was like right from the beginning. And so if you look at it and you say, they're doing these things right from the start because they fundamentally believe that this stuff is good for the United States. And a lot of that stuff I agree with. Yeah, you need a secure border. You need, start dismantling the bureaucracy. All those things make sense. But if you honestly believed that tariffs were in that category, that tariffs were so great for America, then why haven't you done it already?
So
Right?
this is another sign that the
Why have the
tariffs
delay?
are
Right?
a
Yeah, to me,
negotiating tactic.
I think so. I think, why have the delay? Why have this jump up and down? Hey, we're gonna do it on April 2nd. We had a State of the Union address and said we're gonna have this big thing. We're gonna wait another month and a half for this to take place. If tariffs are so great, then why not do it now? Why wait? And so this is one of the things that makes me skeptical. Why do you wait if you honestly believe tariffs are good, then why haven't you done it already? Which is what makes me think maybe they actually realize that these aren't good. They are using this just as a negotiation tactic. And the fact that there's not been a single leak of any, just a morsel of information, and nothing has leaked, that's so unusual, because again, everything, the leaks are commonplace in government. Top secret information gets leaked all the time. Classified details get leaked all the time. Details of supposedly secret executive orders and legislation, this stuff gets leaked all the time. There's been nothing about these tariffs, and they haven't actually done anything yet. They could have done it on day one, but they haven't. So the whole thing makes me very skeptical. Like, is it actually happening? Do they actually believe these things are good? Or is it just another head fake trying to create a better negotiating position?
But like you said, even if it is that head fake, that's almost worse in a way, because that means everything changes tomorrow once again. And there's once again no longer the certainty. And I think that's what is feeding into this mania in the stock market. And again, like you said, the questions that we've been getting are, how do you deal with this as a rational investor?
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything, you've got to step back and wonder, what's the news here? What is the new piece of information, and how does this affect my investment? But I think more importantly is to step back. You have to step back and take a hard look at yourself in the mirror and say, what kind of person am I? What kind of investor am I? Am I an investor who wants to own a piece of a really great, successful business? Or am I a speculator who is just looking to buy and sell and flip stocks? And those are two different things. And they're not mutually exclusive, but usually what you find is people are generally kind of tend to be more on one side or the other side. They buy into a stock. You think about like meme stocks, all the meme stocks that we've seen, like these aren't wonderful, successful, uber successful businesses. These are like, I'm going to get into this because it's on Reddit, and this crowd's going to push it to the moon. And so I don't really, people buy into this stuff, and it doesn't actually, they're not looking for like how successful the business, how well managed is this business, what's its level of profitability, how's its, what's its gross margins, and the kind of capex it has to be. People aren't looking at that stuff. It's like, they're just like, I'm buying it at 2 and tomorrow I'm going to sell it for 5. That's what they're looking at, right? And that's definitely more of a gamble versus looking at a business and saying, do I want to own this business, right? Do I want to actually have a piece of this super successful business and be really kind of a long-term partner in this business? And in my opinion, I think most people kind of generally tend to find themselves in one of those two categories. They either buy stocks or they invest in to own businesses. And I think you first got to decide which of those two you are. And in my opinion, it's a hell of a lot easier to figure out and identify businesses that have the potential to become more successful than they are today. That's a lot easier. There's no guarantee, right? There's always risk, but it's a lot easier to kind of look at a business and say, hey, are these guys well managed? Do they have talented people of integrity managing the business who have a track record of being able to adapt and overcome to circumstances? Do they have a product that's beloved by the world around? Do they have a clean and healthy balance sheet? They've used debt very sparingly, if at all, right? All these things like that's, and hey, like they've got great R&D, they're very talented, they're coming out with new products. This is the sort of thing we can kind of identify and say, yeah, this is a business that could be a lot more successful in the future.
And in
That's
that
an
case, you don't
easier,
care if the stock price drops tomorrow by 25%, because that doesn't actually change the bottom line of how profitable the company is.
right. If tariffs go up by 25%, does that mean that Apple is automatically 25% less successful than it is today? Does tomorrow mean, oh, Apple's forever and ever until the end of time, Apple's going to be 25% less successful than it is today? No, that's ludicrous. It's ludicrous, right? So, and this is not, I'm not trying to recommend Apple or anything. I think the point is that everybody can make their own analysis, his or her own analysis on whether or not some company has the potential to be more successful tomorrow than it is today, more successful next year, 10 years from now than it is today. And everybody has that ability to make that determination for themselves. And then of course, the other thing about that analysis that we control entirely is at what point do we choose to buy, right? What's the buy price? Is the buy price at a point where the price earnings ratio is reasonable, that the price, the enterprise value to free cash flow reasonable? All these things that we get to determine our entry point, right? Versus if somebody's just sort of a stock investor, yeah, they determine the entry point, but it's a lot harder to figure out, is the stock going to go up? Is the stock going to go down? Because, tomorrow somebody's going to open his mouth. It could be the chairman of the Fed. It could be the president of the United States. It could be some obscure finance minister in Central Europe that nobody's ever heard of, but somehow comes out with an announcement that rocks the markets. And none of these things we can predict. We can predict none of those
So
things.
that would change the herd mentality. That would change whether people are buying or selling, but that doesn't change the profitability of a company if they're still making money, what their margins are, or anything like that.
Right. I mean, it makes the stock price go up or makes the stock price go down. And that to me is very, very difficult to predict. Jerome Powell could go in front of Congress this week and open his mouth and say something that completely rocks the market. Or it could light a fire and make people go, oh, the market's, companies going to the moon. And this is the sort of thing. I mean, when you think about the Federal Reserve will come out and set this expectation that, let's say, oh, we're going to keep interest rates on hold. We're not going to do anything. And then all of a sudden at their next meeting, they cut interest rates by 25 basis points, right? It's unexpected. And investors go, yeah. And then they run and they buy stocks because of this unexpected surprise of the Fed cutting interest rates, right? The general rule is lower rates are good for stocks. And so they go and they pile into the NASDAQ and all these sorts of things. Does Microsoft become more profitable because the Fed cut rates by 25 basis points? Is anybody at Microsoft going, oh man, our profits are so juiced right now thanks to the Fed? The Federal Reserve just literally, if you listen to these like earnings calls they do every quarter, the Fed never makes it into their earnings call because it's just completely irrelevant to Microsoft. It's irrelevant to Apple. It's irrelevant to Tesla. It's irrelevant to all these companies what Fed policy is, but it's one of these things that in the short run, it makes investors go crazy. They just get ecstatic for Fed cuts or Fed hikes and all these things. And so that's the bread and butter of the speculator versus the investor, somebody that says, is this business, do they have a great product? Do they have great management? Are they actually relatively cheap and undervalued right now, at least relative to where they could be in the future? That's a lot easier analysis to me than trying to divine what the Fed's going to do, what the president of the United States is going to say. For me, that's impossible to predict. And so I think as an investor, just looking at tariffs in the same way, you have to just make that determination of whether or not the things you own and what you invest in, is this really, is this a permanent hit until the end of time that's going to permanently make this business less successful? And I think that's something that people have to be very rational.
I like this concept you talk about as well, where if you're going to buy one share of a company, act like you're buying the entire company. So when you look at the fundamentals of it, is that something that is a good value right now that's going to be profitable? How long it would take to make back your initial investment?
Yeah, this is why we've looked for a long time at these real asset investments. We've been saying this, and we'll continue to say it as long as that opportunity exists. And we've been talking about this, like gold is a great example. The price of gold is over $3,000, an all-time record high. And yet you have these gold companies that are absurdly crazy cheap. Silver's doing extremely well, not at its record high, but it's doing extremely well. You've got silver companies that are extremely cheap. And we've talked about why that is. The gold price is being driven by central bank demand. Central banks are buying gold. They're selling their dollars. They're getting rid of their dollars, and they're buying gold. They buy gold. They buy physical gold bars. They don't buy gold companies. And so gold companies have kind of been left for dead. Nobody's buying them because, a long time ago, Greta Thunberg said gold companies are evil, and she scowled and wagged her finger at the world. So people stopped buying gold companies. They stopped buying silver companies. And so there's our chief analyst in our top investment newsletter. He was just on the phone with the CEO of this company the other day, and he called me and said, these guys are making money hand over fist. They're making $2,000 an ounce right now, and they're trading at like 3 times earnings, 2 times cash flow. I mean, it's a joke. There's another one he told me about, another company that's literally trading, its market cap is less than the amount of cash that they have in the bank. And they're
So taking that
profitable, and they're paying a dividend.
and
And you look
taking
at
that
this, I mean,
concept of if you buy one share, you're buying the whole company. If you bought that entire company, you take the money out of the company,
you take
the
the money out of the
cash.
bank, right? You buy the company for free. You pay X for it, and they've got more than X sitting in the bank account. You could drain the bank account, put all your entire purchase price in your pocket on day one. Who wouldn't want to own that business, right? And so this is the sort of thing that, at least what our research we tend to focus on right now are basically like, where is the market just giving it away, where there's these clear and obvious catalysts. And we think there's still obvious growth catalysts for a lot of real assets, for gold prices, for silver prices. We've talked about uranium. We've talked about platinum, a lot of things. I mean, a lot of these companies that have great fundamentals, the underlying asset has tremendous fundamentals, and the companies, they're just given away for nothing. So in the same way, we can look at those and go, hey, here's a well-managed business. Here's a company that's got a great balance sheet. They've got a product that's a critical real asset right now where there's clear growth catalysts. The balance sheet is pristine. They're paying a dividend. They're giving this thing away for nothing. That's what I'm talking about in terms of having this rash. Do I care if there's 20% tariffs on a business that's trading for less than the amount of cash it has in the bank and is profitable and is paying a dividend? Do I really care? If there's tariffs, no, I don't care. They're still giving the business away for nothing, right? So this is the kind of, I think, rational approach that it still makes sense to have. Anybody that, a lot of times I think individual investors in particular tend to buy out of euphoria and sell out of a panic. And that, doing anything in life emotionally is usually a recipe for disaster. Any kind of emotional decision is usually a bad decision. And that's absolutely the case with financial and investment decisions. And this is why I think today, this is the day, this is, April Fool's Day. It's April 1st, but nothing about this is a joke. Tomorrow is supposed to be Liberation Day. Today should be Rational Day. Today's the day to be rational and to actually think about whatever it is, life, business, investments, et cetera, all the things that might be impacted tomorrow, assuming they actually come out with something. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. I wouldn't be surprised if they just, we're going to wait another month, and kind of keep everybody in suspense with bated breath, which I think is just a stupid idea. But I think it makes sense today. Be rational today and think about the implications of what am I going to do if there's a 20% across the board tariff? What is that going to mean in my life? What is that going to mean in my business? What is that going to mean in my finances, my portfolio? And think about that today before things get really kind of emotional and perhaps irrational tomorrow. Because you might see, based on what happens tomorrow, you could see, we could see the market crash. We could see if it's less than what people thought it was, we could see the market surge. We could see all sorts of things. We could see no news at all. We'd see nothing happen. I mean, and so it just makes sense to think about some of that today. So today should be the rational day. Tomorrow is the fake liberation day.
What would it take for the tariffs to actually work? And Make America wealthy again.
A whole lot of this, a whole lot of that. Tariffs in general don't work. There's a very clear economic history on that. You don't have to go back to the 1930s. I mean, there's post-war history in the 80s. I mean, there's a lot of cases about this. But at the end of the day, here's what you need. You would need tariffs to be imposed. You would need the rest of the world to go, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, kick us in the teeth. That's fine. Again, you could make an argument there's some kind of moral, ethical justification for this, for tariffs. But you basically need the rest of the world to say, sure, fine, yeah, we'll suck it up. You would need the rest of the world to not impose retaliatory tariffs. You would probably need a good chunk of the world, especially China, probably India, some places, I mean, basically the entire Eurozone, some place in Latin America, Mexico for sure. You need a lot of these countries to devalue their currencies, not, accept it with equanimity and peace, to not impose retaliatory tariffs, to devalue their currencies. You would need businesses to actually believe that these tariffs will in fact be permanent, right? Because a lot of businesses go, I'm just going to sit on this for the next couple of for 2 years. These guys are going to get destroyed in the midterm elections. They're going to reverse course, and so I'm not even going to waste my time dignifying these tariffs. You would need businesses to go, okay, these are the new rules, and they're going to be permanent forever and ever until the end of time.
Right. That's what
Right.
I was wondering, because say a business, part of the point seems like they're trying to bring obviously business back to the United States. So build those factories. So is that the day the business starts building that factory and then gets a month and a half into it after spending billions of dollars, and then the tariffs get pulled and they go,
Right. And
okay,
they go,
well,
haha,
now
just
we got to
kidding.
buy from China again. Right.
Right. So of course, that's what everybody's going to believe. Nobody's going to believe that this is permanent. So why would anybody say, let's invest billions and billions of dollars on day one, rebuilding factories, reopening factories in the United States, when they know could be tomorrow, could be next month, could be next year, could be, in the next election, somebody else is going to come along and pull all those tariffs. We're going to go back to the way things are today. So why would I spend any money, invest anything, versus I'll just kind of suck it up for now and do what I need to do to keep my business, going for the next couple of years, and then we'll see. Like, so, I mean, these are the sorts of things that have to happen. Like, you're going to have to rely on businesses in order for these tariffs to work. Again, you need the rest of the world to just take it in the teeth, to just accept it, to not impose retaliatory tariffs, to potentially even devalue their currencies. You need businesses to immediately begin investing, to believe that these tariffs are going to last forever, and to immediately begin investing in factories, which means you're also going to need state and local governments to green light and fast track all of these new factories. Say, forget about the environmental permits and forget about, all the, what do they call those? The late Native American land acknowledgement ceremonies and all these sorts of things that you have to do, all the OSHA compliance and all those things. We're gonna green light and fast track all of these things, and then of course you need very forgiving consumers who will believe the narrative that whatever disruptions there will be in terms of supply chains and the price increases that come from that will be very short-lived. You need people to believe that and be very forgiving of any short-term disruptions. That's what's necessary in order for these tariffs to work. Are all those things going to happen? Probably not. Probably not. So if they actually do impose this, I think it could be pretty nasty. I think it could be pretty nasty. And, not to mention, they're going to get sued. There's going to be court cases pile up. There's going to be some judge in some district somewhere who's going to impose a universal restraining order that's going to apply to all tariffs across the board, which shouldn't even really be constitutional, which is why a lot of people, Chuck Grassley in the Senate is actually introducing a new bill to prevent federal judges from being able to do that. And unsurprisingly, it actually has bipartisan support. Both Republicans and Democrats are for this because it's giving judges way too much power. One judge in some district somewhere decides what's going to happen across the entire country. Is a little bit ridiculous, but almost certainly that's going to happen with tariffs as well, right? So it just, all it does is create a lot more uncertainty, and it makes it very, very difficult to assume that these things are going to go right and they're going to have this super great, benign, no consequence scenario. It just doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
You also mentioned local and state regulations, and obviously there's federal regulations as well. And that's what's so ironic to me, is that if they had just focused from day one on eliminating those regulations, those factories would already be being built. They
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
have
mean,
to impose tariffs to try to bring that back to the United States, because people would want to do business in the United States. Do you see a future where manufacturing does come back to the United States?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've talked about this before. My view on this is not. I don't think this is some pie in the sky sci-fi sort of thing. This is all these things that we've talked about before. I call it kind of jokingly the Star Trek reality, but it's not science fiction, and this is real, and it's based on technology that is currently either in development or already out there, right? So we don't need to rely on nuclear fusion. We have nuclear fission and the developing technology of small scale reactors. We have already AI. We've got very rapidly advancing automation, robotics, all these sorts of things. And so all those things, if you imagine factories that are completely automated where one guy can have a factory, run a factory that's entirely powered by robotics, AI automation, that's powered by small scale reactor, that's 3D printing most of the resources that it needs, most of the input costs and raw materials. You just get to a point where the cost of manufacturing in the United States is virtually nothing. And it's the technology, it's American technology that will make the US a manufacturing powerhouse again. Not tariffs. It's technology that's going to do that. They don't need tariffs to bring manufacturing back to the US. All you need is a technology. One of the things that, just as an example, Taiwan Semiconductor is the most advanced microchip fabricator in the world. Said, let's go and put a facility in Arizona so we can start manufacturing the stuff in the United States. We have a microchip company, so we know this very well. The company's doing great. We kind of followed what's happening with TSMC there. I mean, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare for TSMC. They had to deal with the state, they had to deal with the local regulators, they had to deal with the federal stuff, and even the federal government tried to fast track this a little bit. And then the friggin' unions got involved. They had to deal with the unions. And these are the Taiwanese guys going like, "What unions? What is this?" And so it's just the headaches that they had to deal with all this stuff. And so if you can, that's what Americans voted for. Americans voted for squashing the bureaucracy, keeping prices low, getting rid of the deep state, getting rid of this just these giant, really everywhere, state, local, federal, everywhere across the board. Just let our lives be easier. Let it be easier to do business. That's what people voted for. Tariffs are going to be the opposite of that. You're going to have ships come into the ports now. You're going to have armies of customs officials there imposing tariffs on all these things and collecting duties, all these different. I mean, it's just the paperwork alone on all those tariffs is just going to be insane. It's actually going to increase the size of the federal bureaucracy just to enforce all of these tariffs. It's a stupid idea and it's going to make people worse off. But ultimately, what's going to make people better off is going to be all that technology, and all that stuff really exists today. That's really where the future is, and I think that's the big silver lining for the U.S. economy in the future.
So they could definitely, just by encouraging those technology companies to stay or relocate to the United States, who would be the big winner in that scenario? In the scenario where that technology does outpace the growth of government and comes in to save the day?
It does. I mean, when you think about it, they call it Moore's Law, right? Where they talk about basically the idea is that, the technology kind of doubles every 6 months. In some respects, that's true. Or every 6 months, every 2 years. And it varies like based on industry. AI is moving a lot more rapidly. Some things moving a little bit more slowly. But if you think about the growth of the national debt versus the growth of technology and intellectual property, technology moves much, much faster than even the national debt. And that's the big hope. And where that goes, if you kind of imagine like, well, what's the future? I mean, the future is definitely AI, automation, robotics, power, all these things. And honestly, there's a lot of companies that are in that. I mean, has been very popular. OpenAI has been very popular. To be frank, the company that I think right now is best positioned for this, and I can't believe I'm going to say this because I busted on them for so long, is actually Tesla. Is Tesla? I mean,
Well,
let's
to
call
be
it just
fair, when
let's
you
let's
were when
call
you
it
were
let's call it Elon Inc. Whatever incarnation that
right,
takes.
so you're talking about Tesla as a periphery investment for anything that would come out of.
Tesla's not a car company. It's not a car company. Tesla is a future company. That's what it is. That's what it is. And I didn't appreciate that or understand that in 2018, 2019. It was like crazy. This guy would go out and he'd tweet something and the stock would go up. And I'm like, man, that's not even legal. You can't even do
To,
that. You can't
to your credit, they
manipulate
weren't
your.
making any money, and they had a valuation that was like 1,000x what would even be perceivable for them to be earning. So
Yeah, I mean, when
your
somebody's
point
trading
at the
at
time.
1,100 times earnings, is an absurd valuation that's not worth paying. But when I look at Tesla today, it's not really Tesla so much as to look at what Elon's done. I mean, there was recently, I read, basically kind of a merger between the X AI and X Twitter, right? And I saw that, and that's when I put it together. I go, oh my god, that's genius. Because when you look at what all the all the AI companies need, they're all starving for human content. People think that human beings are going to be put out of work by AI, and that's actually ludicrous. And I think again, the message is like humans who don't understand or use AI are going to be replaced by humans who use AI. But humans are not going to be replaced by AI. AI requires human beings. They need the creativity of human thought, human content to actually learn from and grow from. Otherwise, you end up, and there have been a lot of studies with these where they take AI generated content that feeds back into the AI to learn from. And it only takes a couple of cycles of that before what comes out is just complete and utter garbage. So you have to have human generated content feeding the AI systems. And they're all starving for that, which is why all these AI and their LLMs, all that stuff, they love Reddit because it's this bulletin board where, millions of human beings go and they post content. Well, what do you think Twitter is? Excuse me, X. What do you think X is? I mean, X is hundreds of millions of people going and posting stuff. That's what Elon bought. He bought this entire ecosystem of content. And how do you know what's good content versus bad content? Well, the users actually go and do that themselves. The users go and police that content, say, no, this is bullshit, or there's some community notes here that actually, make an adjustment to the validity of the content. So now the AI is trained to go, okay, this is bad content because of the community notes. This is good content. So it's constantly training itself up to the minute, up to the second. At this point, because of the exposure to all that data in Twitter X, the XAI is the most advanced AI in the world. And then you've got Tesla that's basically doing the hardware side of that because, of course, these guys are working on self-driving, automation, robotics. So now you take the robotics and the hardware side of the automation with the software AI side of the automation, you put that together. I'm convinced that's what this guy's doing. That's the master plan. That
So you're
and
saying
going to Mars and all that.
you're saying Grok has a built-in data source, whereas these other companies are relying on other people's data.
Yeah, Google and Microsoft, all these guys are there. OpenAI, they're all relying on other people's data. They're trying to license other people's data. They're trying to buy data. They're trying to buy content. They're trying to just sort of harvest as much content as they can to feed into their AI to make ChatGPT better, to make ChatGPT smarter. But Grok already has that built in. So it can make Grok, so Grok can grow and learn so much better, so much more rapidly, be so much more advanced, stay up to the minute, up to the second. And then they've got Tesla, which is handling the hardware side of that. So you take the software side at XAI and Twitter X, basically, and combine that with the hardware things they're doing at Tesla, and God help us at Neuralink and all these other things that are taking place. You put all that together, that's the future company, is what that. I mean, we might not like it, but that's the reality. And that's how I feel like, that and the fact that they've got very cozy ties with at least people on the right. I think you could probably see just a ton of government contracts being steered that way. I think you can see a tremendous
That's what
amount of
I said. I said as soon as Tesla it can't sell enough cars, they'll probably just the federal. You'll see the presidential limo become a Tesla.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I mean, Air Force One will be the Tesla jet.
Yeah,
So,
I
so
mean,
yeah, I
and
think
also if they do perfect the self driving, that's going to be a huge boost as well. And I think at that point you'll see people not care so much about the political ideology if they can have a actual self driving car.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a whole other thing. I mean, people worry about that, and what about the jobs, and what the jobs are going to be lost, et cetera. We can discuss that another time. But I mean, kind of for the here and now. This is not any kind of recommendation on Tesla, but it's just if I think about the future, if I think about 10 years from now, the company that's kind of on the forefront of that, what I call the Star Trek economy, it's basically everything that Elon's doing. And it's by no means, really a recommendation. But the way I kind of piece it together and think about where all that's going, it wouldn't surprise me if sometime over the next year or two that this guy got into some kind of nuclear power, or something along those lines, at least natural gas, but probably nuclear power. That wouldn't surprise me in the least. And so you see all these things together, the AI on the software side, the robotic automation on the hardware side, even the Neuralink and the implants, an energy play, you put all that stuff together. I mean, that's kind of the economy of the future. That's incredibly productive. Dirt cost manufacturing, manufacture for nothing, production for nothing, and this is what supercharges the U.S. economy in the future. If you're able to, kind of kick the can down the road long enough, keep things under control long enough for that to happen. I think that's 10 years away, maybe less. And
Yeah.
at the moment, I think that basically whatever the stuff that Elon's into, I think that's that right now that's positioned as the best beneficiaries of all those things.
I mean, Elon does say he's had this master plan, and the end result is to get to Mars. Which, by the way, do you know where Grok comes from? Did you ever read that book, Stranger in a Strange Land?
Stranger in a Strange Land. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great book, but it's like the guy from Mars comes back to Earth, and and to grok something is to understand it. So I'd recommend that book to anybody who
I
likes.
wasn't aware that that was actually what he named it for. I wasn't sure if it was like a something
Acronym
medieval
or
or what.
something.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know because it was like the whole thing with like the Model 3, the Model E, the Model Y, and then eventually you get to like sexy. And so I thought, is this like some long-term thing? He's going to come out with something else, and it's all part of like some phrase or some palindrome or whatever that was just like going to be a 20-year joke for him. But yeah, maybe that's the case. But you're right. Great book. Great book.
yeah.
Okay,
All
man.
right. Well,
Let's leave it
thanks,
there
James.
then.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay. Take it easy.